Okay, so it is 9:05. Hopefully some more folks will be able to join us. Have to start off every meeting with the verification that this was indeed a meeting that went up to the open meeting notice site of the state of Wisconsin. So this is an open meeting. Anyone is free to attend. And then the next thing on our agenda is to continue working on proposed draft language. So hopefully you should be seeing my screen. And what I have as far as notes is that we need to start in the section. This is a big section. On milk temperature. Oh, I take that back. It's the section on measuring milk. And we did some modification of this earlier portion to separate it out into 3 separate sections when measuring milk from a bulk tank at a farm, when measuring milk at the farm using a department approved inline measuring device. And those 2 sections we got through. My notes say that we need to start at item C, which is when measuring milk when weighed at the receiving plant. So remove the B of the bolding. And Helen, I believe your plants do some of this. Thoughts on how this should be worded to talk about how to weigh the milk in the truck for measurement purposes?
Boy, so now you're talking about direct agitation.
Not agitation. This is just the measuring of the milk. So this would be things like making sure that the facility has a scale that has been checked by someone.
Certified by the state or ESN association.
Well, the scale actually would be weighing of the milk, right? So,
yep.
So we use a certified scale. We don't have a scale on our property, but we have some agreements with local co-ops. So it's a certified scale where the truck is scaled full and then scaled empty.
Laura, I was just going to say from my experience back when we had the transfer facilities, that was the same for both our plants. It was just a certified scale, and exactly what Helen said: empty, loaded, empty, and then you just had to worry about that winter period where drivers come in with a lot of snow on their truck and they want to wash it off. But that's a shrink issue with the cooperative or whoever is in charge of that milk. But
so Laura, do you want to say shall use a certified scale, or do you want to leave room for plants to have the ability to use, for example, a certified meter on the intake? Could you say certified measuring device?
Yep.
And again, it's not for me to say, it's for you guys to say, but just if you do want to leave it open for them to use a certified meter. Obviously, all sorts of plants have all sorts of issues with how they have their meters installed in their plants, which can lead to measurement of air. So I'm not for 1 second suggesting that using a meter at the intake is foolproof. But I think it does depend on how you execute on that, whether you do it properly or mismanage.
Okay, so taking that into account, what I did is I went back up into B and added into B when measuring milk at the farm or receiving facility using a department approved inline measuring device. So that opens the door to use an inline measuring device at the receiving plant, and then change C to say when measuring milk by weight at the receiving plant. That sound like it can cover all of the options we have either know exist or have imagined.
Yes. Yeah, that looks good. It doesn't, I can't remember who said it last week, but that person was saying, well, we're going to have 3 sections, and one is in the bulk tank or shipping out of a bulk tank, one is direct loading, and the third one is receiving at the plant. So we're changing that a little bit now in structure, but I'm fine with it. I think the way you've done it is very clean.
So Laura, does C then need to say the facility shall use a certified scale or meter?
Well, we covered the meter now up in B. So we're saying
Okay.
that the receiving facility is using an approved inline measuring device.
Okay.
So that's covered there. And so this is strictly if you're doing it by weight at the receiving plant.
I think it is straightforward and understandable and clean also.
Okay. Anything else we need to say here to assure that say a single farm pickup or a direct ship load is measured accurately? We talked about the snow, but if I heard the group correctly, the snow, if anything, would add to the producer's weight, not detract from the producer's weight. And so that's something that the plant would have an economic interest in, but the department, all we care is that the farmer is paid for the milk they have. If the facility chooses a method that ends up paying the producer more, we generally do not get involved in that.
That is correct with what you said, Laura.
Brandon, is there anything that needs to be addressed in terms of what vehicle pulls the trailer on the scale? You know, sometimes there's a drop yard scenario, or is there anything more that needs to be addressed?
In the situations, I'm only familiar with the situations I'm only familiar with. And so like in our transfer facilities, and I think of the plants that for our other trucking company that we hauled into, if you have a trucking company that is truck and trailer farm pickup, you maybe there should be something said. I don't know how it would say it. Does it have to be the same truck, or does it have to be a double drop where that trailer gets a, where they have to unhook? Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm not in the situations I've dealt with. No one did that, or no one does that. Everyone who was hooked to the trailer stayed hooked to the trailer through the whole process. So either we say they have to do that, or they have to, if they're going to unhook from that trailer, they have to drop that trailer on the scale loaded and then drop that trailer on the scale empty.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend restricting it to it having to be the same vehicle pulling the trailer all the time, because I think if you guys are looking for
change you're right. Things change. So if someone wants to change a model and we don't have a way for that model to be changed, that's not good, and we haven't addressed it. So I agree. Laura, does that make sense?
That makes sense. Andy, I see you joined us. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. You might have some input on this also, what we're talking about.
Yeah, we have what's called a reweigh. So they initially come through when we drop trailers, and if it's going to get reweighed, then it requires that, that it's dropped, that then at least then we can recognize that whatever tractor attached to the trailer has to reweigh before it's allowed back into the intake. That's just our way of tracking it. So if we hit reweigh, then we know that that trailer's dropped, and then when it's attached, if they pulled into the intake, somebody would recognize that it was dropped, and then that they have to scale back in before they come into the intake. So that's just how we do it. But
Andy, with you saying that's how you do that, how would you propose? I see what Laura's writing here, and maybe this would cover that. But is there any specific way then that you would propose this in writing?
Well, I think you look at what we've done before on the top. We in this section we're specifically given examples of what if we make it a little more vague, like an approved weighing system or approved devices, then it just doesn't limit it to. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud,
Is it? And maybe
I think.
Sorry, I was just going to say, and maybe what Laura has there is enough. Yeah.
I think what Laura has is enough, because whether it be an independent, or if the dairy plant has a yard horse, right, and they're picking up a drop and they're going to go across the scale, they're going to empty it, wash it, scale it, right, put it back in the yard for the independent to pick up. So I think that's really back to the dairy plant, as to what's the procedure for their plant, as long as they know by rule, right, it has to be weighed on a certified scale. You can have all different kinds of scenarios and one-offs. And so I don't know that you can put in writing for every case scenario. I think what Laura has there written, right, it must be weighed, and that covers it, because then each plant has to figure out, right, how they're going to conduct their business.
Right. And I think, this obviously is beyond the food safety part of the department, but if you look at weights and measures or commerce or whatever, I think as long as the two parties are agreeable on how it's done between the patron and the plant, again, then I mean it covers that part of it. I guess that's how we kind of look at it. I mean, the farmer is aware that he's dropping trailers. We have a system in place that's making sure he's getting paid for what he's selling. It's really not, as long as we both agree to that system, I think then we're good. It's not going to jeopardize food safety at all the way we measure it.
Yeah. I need to take into account two other groups within the department. One you identified, which is weights and measures, and that's why we identify it needs to be some type of certified scale. But the other one is trade. Trade practices, like I said, wants to assure that the farmer gets paid for their milk. If the plant uses a process that ends up paying the farmer more than they should have, say that they weigh tankers full of snow, bring them in and measure them going out without any snow on them, that is something that the plant needs to work out with the patron, but trade will want to make sure the patron got paid for the amount of milk they had. Anything else we need to add? Now I did change item B, where I indicated that ended up there. They indicated that we indicated that you can use the approved inline measuring devices at the farm or at the receiving facility, and that you shall that the rest of that language stayed the same. But then here we added facilities shall use a certified scale. The tanker shall be weighed when full, and then again after it has been emptied. Care must be taken to assure that the configuration of the tanker is taken into account for both weighings. Not saying that they have to record that or anything. If they assure that it is the same or similar weight equipment that is on the scale at both times, they're taking it into account.
I think it's good.
Yay. Milk sample for testing. This one's going to get a lot, probably a lot of additions, because right now, well, let's go see what 8212 says. Okay, 8212 is down here, so we might not have to change this section significantly, because this section says the bulk milk weigher and samplers shall collect test samples according to 8212. And so we might just need to update 8212.
There's just one thing, which is that it's saying that the timing of it, just there at the beginning of A, the wording is before milk is transferred from a dairy farm bulk tank to a bulk milk tanker. And obviously in an inline scenario, first of all, it doesn't go into a bulk tank. And then second of all, the sample is actually taken during that transfer, which is happening constantly, I guess, as the load is being built. Yeah, looks good.
Okay, so I removed the before language and started this paragraph with using an approved sampling method. A bulk milk weigher and sampler shall collect a representative sample of that milk from the bulk tank for testing.
Do you want to prevent people from taking a sample once it's loaded? You know, when looking at the language you had before, is the aim of that language in part to make people sample before the load is transferred, if you like? And if so, do you want to keep timing language in and do, you know, before or during the transfer from before or during the loading period and using an approved sampling method, a bulk milk weigher and sampler shall? That's just, I don't know if you guys are sensitive to the timing, in which case that's probably appropriate, or whether actually it doesn't matter if they do it after they've put it into the trailer.
Yeah. What the language in 9B is there for is we have had farmers that have expanded their operation without increasing the size of their bulk tank. And so we have had, and this has been on more than one occasion, farmers who will store additional milk in 55-gallon drums and then add it back to their tank after the tank's been empty. And so that's where this language came from. So
you're kind of covering the timing element with that piece anyway, aren't you? So I think your new language probably works then in that case, because you've specifically prevented add-ons, add-ins.
yeah, I think there's one thing I want to add here. And that's just sampling and or measuring, because we could have a situation where the sample is taken in line loading the truck, but the measuring is going to happen at the plant through weight. So after the sample is taken and is identified as representative for that load, no additional milk can be added.
Are you leaving a little loophole there in B1? Because are you leaving a loophole to allow people to do the measuring and then add milk? If you're saying sampling or measuring, so they may have just measured, for example.
Usually in legal language, if we say and or, it means that if you sample, even if you haven't measured, you can't add milk. If you've measured, even if you haven't sampled, you cannot add milk. Or if you've done both, you cannot add milk.
Okey-doke.
Thoughts on this section? And looks like I need to move these two notes down to section 8212, because that's where we will need to add the instructions for how to pull a sample. So let's do that. Can I? Yeah, I'll worry about that later. I'll make a note to okay, milk collection record. Whenever a bulk milk weigher and sampler collects a milk shipment from a dairy farm, the bulk milk weigher and sampler shall make a written or electronic collection record for that shipment. One duplicate or electronically printed copy of the collection record shall be posted in the dairy farm milk house, and an identical copy shall be provided to the dairy plant operator when the milk is delivered to a dairy plant. The milk collection record shall be legibly signed or initialed by the bulk milk weigher and sampler, and shall include the producer's plant identification number, the bulk milk weigher and sampler's information, date and time when the milk was sampled and collected, temperature of the milk when collected, and weight or volume of the milk collected as determined by the bulk milk weigher and sampler. So we've got some work here. First thing that stuck out in my mind is that. So how do we define electronically printed? Do we think that language includes electronically downloaded to a system?
Laura, you would be referring to like mobile manifest capabilities then?
Yes.
Okay.
To avoid the written or the electronic, could we just say that the records have to be available, and these are the records that have to be available at the farm in some form? Is that, you see where I'm saying, going down that, like we've got these systems now with bulk tanks that don't have any record, written record temperature recording, but there's, as long as we have access to them, then the data is there. Could we write it in that form of wording that, you know, the following has to be available for on the farm, you know, temperature, weight, that kind of thing?
I like that. My one question is, so then how do we, what do we do with the legibly signed or initialed? Can we include language that says like a digital signature, or do we need to?
Yep.
Okay.
And good morning, everybody. And I agree as well, but I just wanted to note that I think that you had addressed this in earlier language that you might be able to peek back at and duplicate.
Laura, I wondered about, you know, can we really say that it's the bulk milk weigher and sampler who's making this written or electronic record? Is it always the bulk milk weigher and sampler who's doing that? Or
Okay.
is
Yeah.
it more accurate to say that that record is being generated?
Yep. Okay. So.
Sorry, I know.
Nope, that's okay. I'm at the top of page 12. And John is right. We did. Okay. For bulk milk weigher and sampler accepts the milk. This is the top line is the language we have up above about temperature. Accepts the milk. Shall ensure the Okay. Before bulk milk weigher and sampler accepts the milk, so this, they're not collecting the milk, they're accepting it, so they could be accepting it at the dairy plant. The bulk milk weigher and sampler shall ensure the following information regarding the milk to be accepted is recorded. And so that will bring us down to this section. This information shall be readily available at the dairy farm and provided to the dairy plant operator before or at the time the milk is delivered to the plant. Thoughts? Alex, do you need me to read it again since you're on a phone?
Nope, I caught it. I caught most of that, and I'm just getting ready to log on back here at my desk, so I'll take a look.
Okay.
I think it sounds good, Laura, but I'm just continuing to look at it.
Laura, so I like the change that you've made there in 10. I'm wondering, do you need to kind of follow that through in the following sentence? So when you're saying, whenever a bulk milk weigher and sampler collects a milk shipment from dairy farms, bulk milk weigher and sampler shall make a written or electronic collection record for that shipment. Do you need to put some kind of, again, slightly more passive language in there where you're saying, shall ensure a written or electronic record has been created, or are you just going to take it out?
Yeah, I'm just going to take it out.
Perfect.
Yeah, so let's see if I can do this without. Okay, so this is the section as it reads without any of the changes. Before a bulk milk weigher and sampler accepts milk, the bulk milk weigher and sampler shall ensure the following information regarding the milk to be accepted is recorded. This information shall be readily available at the dairy farm and provided to the dairy plant operator before or at the time the milk is delivered to the plant. The collection record shall include the unique identity of the bulk milk weigher and sampler and shall include all of the following. So by changing legibly signed to unique identity, my one concern is we have some haulers out there. Not a lot of them anymore, but we do still have some haulers where it's like, yes, this is my scribble. And it's like, I'm sorry, nobody can read that scribble, but it's unique to them. So how do we say that it includes their unique identity in a way that is readable?
Laura, I feel like in remembering my days where you and Jill were getting after me that it had to be legible.
Yeah.
I feel like that just needs to be included in there. Unique, legible identity or legible unique identity. I think that if it has to be that way, it has to be that way.
I think also you can say signature and then you can just say whether written or electronic.
Well, we don't require signature.
Or
if,
let's say signature or initials, whatever.
yeah,
Your mark.
yeah.
You have people sealing it with wax stamps and things like that.
Yeah, but like for our inspectors, they all have a unique number. And so we don't go by their signatures because I'll be honest, some of my inspectors, you can't read their signatures. But if you call me up and say who is this number, I can tell you who that is. And so their number is their unique identity. But yeah, if we're okay with legible, because you know, anything electronic would obviously be legible.
Laura, this term unique identity, I'm slightly worried about it. Would you be able to say, like, does unique identifier work there?
That make more sense? It's quite a
Yeah.
group.
That's a good idea.
I support it.
Okay, so let's go back to the messy one. And shall include all of the following: milk producer's dairy plant identification number, bulk milkware and sampler's license number and license expiration date, date and time the milk was sampled and collected, since we're no longer saying that since we're not saying collected at the farm, because collected had that term of at the farm, sampled and accepted.
I agree.
Laura, can I ask a question kind of a tiny bit back, which is when we were trying to get our digital records accepted into in Wisconsin, we had to come and kind of sit down with you guys and just satisfy everybody that the record that we had all of the elements required to be an approved digital record. And what I'm wondering is, do you want your language here similarly to say that it has to be an approved digital record or an approved collection record? You know, because you can't just do it in whatever old format you like. There's something further that's required over and above it just having this information. It also has to have been approved by you guys. That's just a question, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we were hoping to do with this rule is eliminate the hurdles you folks had to go through, and say, under the Food Safety Modernization Act, it is the producer's responsibility and the processor's responsibility to assure that they have clear and complete records that meet the requirements of our rule. And so I will ask the group, especially those of you, you know, Helen, Andy, Tony, Alex, can you see a situation where you might come up with a system that could meet all of these requirements, that you would put into effect on your own? without having to go through all of the hoops of getting it pre-approved by the department? Or do you think that the system should be still pre-approved by the department?
So can I just add one thing before people answer, Laura? And the reason I'm not wishing to talk over you, but there's one kind of key thing that I think is important. It's not simply about what information you capture, but it's about how you capture that securely, and you basically guarantee using that security that the information has integrity and that it will be there for the required period of time. So there's more to it, I guess, than just what information is available on a given day.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, I'll let everybody else talk now.
So we
I would
use
agree.
electronic.
Go ahead.
So we use electronic record when we go out to the farm. The hauler's got a tablet, and they scan the QR code on the tank, and then we followed exactly what was in the rule, right? We're required to follow and collect all this information. So here's the producer's number, right? The weight, the temperature, right? The hauler's got his information already on there as far as license number, expiration date. There's a save button. So when he comes back to the dairy plant, he downloads that all, and that goes into our electronic record keeping. So that's there. On the farm, we have a single sheet per month, right? So the patron's information is still collected and written on the farm. So here's the date of pickup, here's the weight, here's the temperature. That way, if the inspector comes on the farm and goes, okay, he's every day pickup, every other day pickup, that information's still there, that they can see it. I don't know that the systems, right, are built around what's required. I don't know that this, that it's reasonable to think that, the state has to be involved in every aspect of approval. You guys are super busy, right? And I think it should be, here's what's required now, right? Get it done, and then your inspectors follow up on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great, Helen. I think what Lee is saying was what Laura just wrote. The how do we state and guarantee that whatever system anyone's going to use is cannot be changed or altered. So if someone has access to that database, you wouldn't want someone to say, oh no, the milk was totally the correct temperature, and here I'll just change this 45 to a 38 or whatever. Andy, I apologize, I cut you off.
Oh, yeah.
No, we're still starting fire with two sticks, so I'm just interested in hearing how this works. No, I'm just trying to run the scenario. So we are always concerned with audits from the state and what the state is requiring. And so in my mind, if you're gonna have these electronic ones, the system's gonna have to show that it's been, changed or something was altered. There's got to be a way that the state can see that nobody's tampering with it. Or I totally get all that. So no, I'm just kind of soaking it in like a sponge, because I'm sure it's something that we'll embrace at some point. It's just, we have contract haulers that haul all our milk and stuff like that. And as much as I'd like to see everything go electronic, some of them guys, it's we're about a generation out. I guess I'll just say it as politely as I can.
Okay, Tony, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, my question was if we needed to add something here about beginning measurement and ending measurement, since we're the rule to pick up pickups now.
You're getting chopped up there a bit.
Oh,
Can you?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
My question was if this is where we need to add something about beginning measurement and ending measurement, where the rule was changed where partial pickups are allowed now in this area, or I was just wondering.
I'm not sure where I think partial pickups are covered elsewhere, but let me put a note up here.
I just know like in our we're um we're developing a mobile manifest and we added that section in just recently for, beginning measurement and ending measurement. And I know a lot of the paper manifests for different companies, and they include that beginning measurement and ending measurement now.
Yep.
So I didn't know if that needed to be added here.
Yeah. We'll need to come back to that one because yeah, we do need that covered somewhere. But like I said, I think that's covered elsewhere. How we do partial pickups.
Laura, I do feel like the direction you're going in F is needed and necessary.
Yes.
I do think if maybe it's like if records are if records are secured, if records are digital, they need to be. And I like what you have there. I'm just thinking like we use language like immutable, but maybe Lee uses something else, or maybe cannot be changed without footprints is good enough. Something. I think you're in the right direction there.
Yeah. So I think so. How it worked in practicality this time around was that we sat down with Wisconsin and we went through the requirements of the PMO, which has a lot of language in one of the appendices that refers exactly to this. So we can either put in something that refers to that, or we can just say, as we have done in relation to inline samplers, that it needs to be approved. And then, Laura, the question is, what's the knock on then for your staff? What does that mean? Does it mean that it comes to you approved, as in somebody says, well, it conforms with the language in the PMO, and that's the approval process? Or is it that as currently effectively that one of your equipment inspectors sits with each new supplier of electronic data capture equipment and comes to a conclusion about whether or not the system is compliant? I think the reality is, all systems are not the same, and you do need some guarantee that that very important data is being handled in a way that would give the parties to the transaction and the consumers security around that custody chain.
Yeah, because the traceability components with the new FDA thing go to cheese, but I wonder how long it'll be before they, go back from cheese into stuff. So I do agree with that. I think we have to think of that going forward.
Okay, some things to think about there. Any other thoughts on section 10? And just so that we make it easier to read again. It has to go across the page. Of course it does. So this is what section 10 says. Actually, I can get rid of that space. That puts it all on one page. Any other thoughts on section 10, recognizing that, yeah, we still have some work to do on this section? Okay, and I'm just going to go up here. Okay, so yeah, section 8 might be where we need to talk about partial pickups. Okay. Section 11. This exception needs to be expanded. Yeah, so 11 is where we talk about partial pickups.
Laura, is there anything in section 11 currently that anyone has issue with, or that it that needs, or is it more we're looking for to make cleaning up the exception piece there at the beginning and amending it?
I'll let others answer if they have any strong feelings one way or the other about this section. Because the thought that runs through my mind is we want to make it clear that this procedure of the bulk milk weigher and sampler transferring milk from the bulk tank to a bulk milk tanker, and the possibility of partial removal does not apply to all systems, doesn't apply to a single farm pickup. That this section was really written with a in the milk house bulk tank with top access port in mind, and we need to at least update it to either clarify how a silo would fit into this the section of the rule, or clarify that a silo doesn't apply to this section of the rule.
Gotcha. Okay.
I had one question on this rule.
Yes, Tony.
It just, I see it just says that, is the language say that, once a partial is taken from a farm, it has to be unloaded and washed before it can pick up the rest of that milk? Because like now, I mean, we're allowed to, pick up 3 loads of milk within a 24-hour period. I didn't know if that was what this was reading.
Okay. This is the farm bulk tank, so maybe it should say that the farm bulk tank must be cleaned and sanitized each time it is fully emptied. So it doesn't apply to your truck hauling the milk. It just applies to the farm bulk tank.
Are you including silo as a bulk tank, or do you need to spell that out? Farm
Silo
bulk tank?
is included in the definition of farm bulk tank.
Okay.
So is a bulk tank required to be washed every day or every 72 like a silo, or can they add milk to, can they add milk back to it after a partial pickup or no?
Yes, they can add milk to it. The farm bulk tank must be emptied at least once every 72 hours. So they can milk into the bulk tank, have the hauler pick up part of their bulk tank, milk back onto it again, have the farmer pick up another load, not empty the tank, milk onto it again, but every 72 hours they have to have built into their system that they empty the bulk tank and that they clean and sanitize it.
And it has to have records that show that, correct? That's why we have to have a temperature chart recorder required.
Yep. Yep. Someone had a thought out there.
Can I ask a city boy question?
Absolutely.
The second last sentence says, except as provided in paragraph AM, partial removal of milk from the bulk tank shall only be permitted if the bulk tank is completely emptied. Does that make any sense? I mean, you have to, if you want to remove half of it, you must completely empty it and clean it and sanitize it, but you're only removing half of it. So what does that mean?
Okay, so what that means is, and actually 2 and 3 should probably be flip-flopped. So the bulk tank has to have a 7-day recording chart that enables the inspector to see that, say, we start on Monday morning, we milk into the bulk tank, and the hauler comes and can only take 3/4 of the bulk tank. And so there's still milk in the bulk tank. Farmer milks the evening milking into that bulk tank. Hauler shows up again the next morning, could only take part of the load. Milks on top of the existing milk in that bulk tank. Again, the farm bulk tank must go to completely empty at least once every 72 hours. And when that bulk tank is emptied, it must be cleaned and sanitized.
I would say that sentence does not concur with what you just said,
Okay,
but you guys have been living this more than I, but to me, it says if you're gonna take 3/4 of that load, you have to empty it
okay.
and clean it. And you can't milk on top of it. That's what that sentence seems to say to me, unless I'm reading it wrong.
Oh, okay. I see what's wrong here. This might clarify it a bit. Okay, so paragraph A says that except as provided under parenthesis AM, partial removal of the tank shall only be permitted if the bulk tank is completely emptied and cleaned and sanitized prior to the addition of more milk. So that would be the hauler shows up, they don't have enough room on their truck, and they send another truck out to collect the rest of the milk before they start the evening milking. But this says if you meet all of the requirements of AM, then you don't have to empty every time. So if you've got a farm that doesn't have a 7-day recording chart, they have to completely empty their bulk tank because they don't meet the requirements of AM.
I think that is better that I now understand that that next sentence was in fact AM,
Mhm.
but I'm not 100% convinced, but there you go. Close enough.
I'd say I like that line of thinking because then it allows partial pickup for farms that don't, as long as you don't add more milk to it. You know, I'm in agreement for that, the way it's worded that way.
Yeah, never against it, just trying to understand the sentence construction, really.
Yep.
Are there just 3 requirements there under AM, Laura, or are there more?
There are more.
Okay, great.
So the last one is, and this is the one we run into with some of our electronic recording systems, is the electronic recording systems have to allow for the bulk milk weigher and sampler to somehow indicate when they pulled milk out of that tank. Because if you're just recording the temperature of the tank on your electronic system and you take 2/3 of the tank and leave 1/3 of the tank, the temperature isn't going to change on that tank. And so there has to be some way for the bulk milk weigher and sampler to indicate in that electronic record when a partial pickup is made and the bulk milk tank is emptied. Those are two different things. And wrong thing. And I'm also going to suggest that we delete the word 7-day. Because we're used to a 7-day recording chart, but in this day and age, it's all direct data downloaded to a computer for some of these systems. And let me look up.
Again, Laura, it might this may be if we require that data is recorded to a certain protocol, whether we say approved or whether we say it has to be PMO compliant or whatever we say, we probably want to say it about this too.
Yeah. So, Lee, I need to come back to what you said. 6516(3) gives a lot of detail with regard to a bulk tank temperature recording device. Talks about it needs to be accurate between 40 and 180. 2° Fahrenheit or 1° centigrade increments at temperatures below 100 degrees Fahrenheit. If a circular chart is used, the circular chart shall make one revolution in not more than 7 days and shall be graduated for a maximum record of 7 days. So if we just say that the recording device needs to meet 6516(3), I think we're okay there. So that the removal of the 7 days there work okay for everyone? Okay, Lee, you had an important point and I didn't catch it all. So let's go back to that.
Well, thanks for saying it was an important point. I don't know if it is or not. Remains to be seen. I was just saying if we're allowing an electronic, if we're using language around approval of an electronic record further up, then let's echo that here, or however we handle that language around the integrity of an electronic record. Let's echo that here.
Yeah, I think that we need to just make a general statement that all electronic records shall abide by either we spell out all of the requirements in the PMO or we reference the PMO section. Because otherwise we're just going to have that language over and over again every time we talk about electronic records.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I agree.
Okay. Okay, so section 11. Okay, so we're just looking at this section here. The note I've got below is another big topic we'll need to talk about. Are we okay with that so far?
Excuse the redundancy, but just to clarify, where it's saying bulk tank, obviously silo is understood that they, okay.
Yes, yes, the definition, and let's just go up and double check that. Bulk tank means a permanent or semi-permanent tank, container, or silo used to receive, cool, or store bulk quantities of milk on a dairy farm. Bulk tank does not include milk cans. So yeah, we're including the silos there.
And there's no way that could ever get confused to include trailers then, right, for direct
Correct.
okay. Because they don't have cooling or agitation.
Correct. Yeah, and that's a real hard nuance in this rule, because bulk milk tanker means a mobile bulk tank, bulk container used to transport fluid milk. It includes container which is permanently mounted on a motor vehicle or that is designed to be towed by a motor vehicle. So that's a real hard nuance in here. Tanker means it can move. Tank means it is permanent or semi-permanent on the farm.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go back to all markup. Now, how do we handle partial pickups when using a bulk milk tank truck mounted inline sampler? Do we need this additional language?
Laura, would you mind just scrolling back up for one tiny minute?
Yep.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't think so, because really you're just collecting milk from a farm bulk tank using a truck mounted sampler, but it doesn't change anything in the language. I think I would just remove, unless you think it needs to be expressly permitted because it's novel, I would just leave it. You know, it's an approved technology. It's another way of taking milk from a bulk tank, so you're allowed to pick up a partial using it.
Okay, so it's what I'm hearing you say is we don't need this second section.
That's what I believe.
Other thoughts?
Does this at all prevent a truck taking milk out of a silo and they sample the milk at the plant versus out of the silo?
No, because we added the language at the beginning of this section that says when collecting milk from the farm bulk tank.
Sounds good.
So yeah, all we're doing by saying that is saying, listen, when you pick it up using a truck with a sampling system, metering system inside, it's no different. You're just picking it up in another permitted way.
Okay. Okay, and then this just goes into the disconnecting of the hose from the bell tank, camping the hose, returning the hose to its cabinet. Shall inspect the bulk tank for abnormal sediments and shall report any abnormalities to the dairy plant operator. And then this is the one that requires if the tank is empty, that they shall rinse the bulk tank and milk house floor with cold or lukewarm water unless the bulk tank is self-cleaning and includes a pre-rinse cycle as part of the self-cleaning process. Now, anyone here have silos? How would this apply to a silo? Do all the silos have the pre-rinse self-cleaning process?
We have one with the silo, and yes, it's got the self-cleaning process, part of the CIP program.
Okay. So I think that's the end of section 11. Brings us into a really fun section. Sampling. Where I've already got a whole bunch of red stuff in here. There we go. Bulk milk weigher and sampler or other individuals shall collect a sample of a producer's milk before that milk is commingled with milk from any other producer. Bulk milk weigher and sampler or other individual who collects the sample shall be licensed. And these are the state statutes that just say that as a department, we have to license bulk milk weighers and samplers, or cheese makers or butter makers. That covers all three of those licenses. Okay. Okay, bulk milk weigher and sampler who collects milk from a dairy farm. Dairy farm bulk tank shall collect the milk under paren A. So that says that they have to be licensed. Bulk milk weigher and sampler shall collect the milk sample from the bulk tank before the bulk milk weigher and sampler transfers the bulk tank contents to a bulk milk tanker. We're gonna have to talk about how we insert the inline sampling devices.
Yes. Yeah, the timing element.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you could say where you could do what we did further up and say where the milk sample for testing is being taken from a bulk tank, then XYZ. Where the milk sample for testing is being taken by an approved inline sampler, then
Okay, let's see if I can find that language quickly.
the other option, Laura, if that's not convenient, is to say, you know, have your language say before, or in the case, you know, put language in the alternative in the same paragraph. So you could say, leave A as it is, and then put in a new B that says, in the case of sampling using an approved inline sampler, the bulk milk weigher, sampler, or other individual shall collect a sample of the producer's milk, using, etc.
Okay, so
Laura, to cover that partial pickup language as well, and the on tanker system, do we want to say in that paragraph you've just inserted who collects milk from, and then instead of saying dairy farm, just say an approved inline sampling device, because that could be then tanker based or farm based.
Okay, up above, we did reference the use of a dipper at the farm. So what I've added here is bulk milk weigher and sampler who collects milk from a dairy farm bulk tank using a dipper shall collect the milk sample under paren A. The bulk milk weigher and sampler shall collect the milk sample from the bulk tank before the bulk milk weigher and sampler transfers the bulk tank contents to a bulk milk tanker. Bulk milk weigher and sampler shall collect the sample according to sub 2, which is down here. And that's going to take a whole bunch of work. The milk sample may not be commingled with a milk sample from any other bulk tank. And then we'll have a new letter here, bulk milk weigher and sampler who collects milk using an inline sampling device shall collect the milk sample under paren A. Bulk milk weigher and sampler shall collect the milk sample from the department approved inline sampling device following the procedures set forth by the department for that type of sampler. Milk sample may not be commingled. If the milk producer milks directly onto a tanker, shall collect a sample from the bulk milk tanker before the tanker contents are commingled with milk from any other producer. The individual shall collect the sample according to sub 3, which is incorrect. Sample may not be commingled with milk sample from any other bulk milk tanker or dairy farm bulk tank. So kind of following that progression of where they get sampled. So B, it gets sampled before the milk even looks at the truck. C, the milk gets sampled as it's moving onto the truck. And then the new D will be, it gets sampled at the plant after it's been on the truck and moved to the plant usually. See, and I had now,
Laura, I'm wondering in C there, which I think it all looks good. So both of those, both B and C, just if I understand it correctly, refer you back then to A to say that you need to sample before there's any commingling.
yes,
And that you need a license.
yes.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I was just trying to make sure our references were working.
And I believe our language in C is general enough that we don't need this additional language anymore.
Yeah, that's a good job. Yeah. It's great when you're making the regulation shorter. You know something is going right.
And I need to add the note here. Okay. Okay. So we have section 2 here, which covers sampling, and we've already got a 2, which is the old system of using the dipper and how the dipper shall be used and the bulk tank capacity and all of that fun stuff. We've got a 2M, which talks about sampling from the bulk milk tanker at the plant. So I think we're going to need to add a 2, probably an F, or maybe just renumber that completely. Okay. So let's tackle the one most of us grew up with. Bulk milk weigher and sampler shall comply with the following procedures when collecting milk from a farm bulk tank. So this is strictly dipper language right now. Bulk milk weigher and sampler shall collect the sample from the dairy farm bulk tank after the bulk tank contents have been thoroughly mixed to ensure the sample is representative. And actually, I need to add in okay, so that makes it clear that this section is strictly for dipper. Bulk milk, if the bulk tank capacity is less than 1,500 gallons of the milk in the bulk tank shall be agitated in the bulk tank in the bulk milk weigher and sampler's presence for at least 5 minutes before the sample is taken. If the capacity is 1,500 gallons or more, shall be agitated in the bulk milk weigher and sampler's presence for at least 10 minutes before a sample is taken. Those of you who are working with bulk tanks out there, which I know all of you are probably still working with bulk tanks, there was a comment made in the scope to reference tank manufacturer instructions. Do your farm bulk tanks come with instructions that say how long the tank needs to be agitated?
I think some do. Some of them might be on the stamp on the back of the tank, but I don't know if the hauler is going to go out and look at the back of the tank. But I think it should probably be in the rule that at a minimum of 10 minutes or per manufacturer's suggestion. I don't know the wording, I guess, right? But I think if you want to definitely get a representative sample, it probably should. I mean, some of these tanks are 6,000, 6,500. I don't know if 10 minutes is enough. Maybe the manufacturer, doesn't say that either, but I would say maybe the wording should be changed to address that.
Okay, so I added language here before the stuff that's highlighted in red that says, if the bulk tank manufacturer has tank agitation recommendations, the tank shall be agitated in the bulk milk weigher and sampler's presence. And I think I spelled that wrong. Presence for the length of time specified by the manufacturer. If the bulk tank manufacturer has not specified agitation time, if the bulk tank has less than 1,500 gallons, follow this, follow 5 minutes. If the bulk tank capacity is 1,500 gallons or more, agitate for this length of time. So that puts the manufacturer's recommendations ahead of the generic recommendations. Make sense?
Laura, does that allow the manufacturer to put a lower floor in than you guys?
Yes. If they have data that shows that they have super agitators in their tank and they can agitate that tank in 2.5 minutes, then yes, they can do that. I cannot imagine any manufacturer making a claim like that, but if they can show us the data, we will accept the data.
So just to play devil's advocate for a second, does this regulation require them to show you that? Or does this regulation just say, well, if they recommend it, regardless of data or not, that's what precedes the regulatory, has primacy over what the regulations might say?
Well, the first part of this paragraph says that the bulk milk weigher and sampler shall comply with the following procedures. And so if a sanitarian is out at the farm when the bulk milk weigher and sampler is collecting milk and they notice that the hauler only agitated the tank for 3 minutes, then the sanitarian would ask, why did you agitate that for only 3 minutes? And if they pull out the chart and show us the chart, we would probably accept it at that point and investigate to go to the manufacturer and say, show us all of your study data so that we know we can accept that. So yes, if the bulk milk weigher and sampler wasn't complying with that, we would take that debit against the sampler. Okay.
I suppose, sorry. I suppose what I'm asking is, so say for example, is there a requirement on a bulk tank manufacturer or a silo manufacturer to provide data to ensure that the recommendations that they are giving will ensure a homogeneous sample? And I say that just in the context of, silos going in more and more, and it can be very challenging, I think, to achieve that homogenization. And for your farm inspectors then, and for bulk milk weighers and samplers to have some protection in that you guys can be assured that there's some kind of either regulatory floor that says, okay, it's the regulation is this and this is the minimum, or that if you are relying on manufacturers' guidelines, that they are required to to be approved in that way, the way you're saying an approved inline sampler.
Yeah. So yeah, I have added that language. If the bulk tank manufacturer has tank agitation recommendations that have been accepted by the department.
Perfect.
Well, I think the goal of agitation is to get the representative sample. And if you have a silo and you have an inline sampler, you're going to get your representative sample of the milk that's getting loaded on the truck as it comes out of the silo. So I'm not sure how, I don't know if requiring agitation on a silo is necessary if you're getting a representative sample, which is the end goal of agitation. If the inline sampler is measuring the milk that's coming out of there, I mean, eventually, once it's emptied, you've had a representative sample of all the milk that was loaded coming out of that silo. I'm just speaking out loud a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is where we get into some real gray area with the PMO. Because if you read the PMO very, very carefully, the sample that is taken for monthly quality must be a sample that is taken from a tank that has reached homogeneity. And that is a different standard than a representative sample. The two samples should be the same, but how you get there is very, very different, because if you think about what we do in our intakes, where we take this tanker, we put one agitator into the middle of the tanker and mix up the milk in the middle of the tanker, the two ends of that tanker have not reached homogeneity. And that causes a real problem for how we enforce the PMO. And so one of the goals at the dairy farm bulk tanks is to reach homogeneity if we're taking the sample directly from the tank. And I don't know how we're going to address that, other than maybe I just try and change the PMO and just say, you need a representative sample.
Good luck with that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not an easy job, Laura. We've been there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was just going to say, so I don't know who was speaking just there, but they were definitely correct that an inline sampler will give you a good chance of getting a sample out of a silo. But I don't think there's a requirement that every silo have an inline sampler. So lots and lots of silos don't have an inline sampler, and there can be a challenge there.
Okay, we are at 10 minutes to our end point. Since this is a public meeting and it was announced that it would end at 11 o'clock, we can't go past 11 o'clock. So I am going to leave this to bake over the holidays. And the next question is, when do we want to do our next meeting? 2 weeks from now would be January 2nd. I don't know how many of you are going to be back in the office the day after New Year. So what is the pleasure of those of you on the call?
I like our 2-week clip, but yeah, January 2nd is a bad day for me. What about the following week, the 9th? If we, well,
Okay. Helen, Tony, Andy, John,
or the 16th.
I'm open.
Yeah, I'm open to anything too as well. I can travel and listen and interact.
I can't do the 9th or the 16th, but I feel like there's better people on this committee, so don't stop for me.
My preference would
9th
be
is
the
fine.
9th over the 16th. Sorry, apologies, Helen. After you.
The 9th works.
Yeah, similarly here, the 9th would be great.
Okay. I will make a note. I did have a placeholder in my calendar, so don't worry about this being here on the 2nd. I just did a placeholder just in case. But I will start the open meeting notice process for January 9th. Any last comments?
Well, I just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and thank you for all the good work we're doing here.
Yes, yes, thank you all. And I wish you Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. If you're getting together with family, I hope it is all joyful. If you are traveling, please travel safely. Okay,
Thank you all.
Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Laura.
Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Stop.